Hello. So we are on to round three of the Congress. For anyone that hasn't watched the last two, go watch them quickly before you watch this one. But okay, now I'm on 1.5 out of 2 so far. This is the third round out of the 5 rounds, and yeah, I'm in a perfectly reasonable spot in the tournament right now. There's quite a few people on 2 out of 2 still. I mean, we're only 2 rounds in and there are like 40 people playing the event, so unsurprising, but dropping half a point is not a bad place to be as long as I can pick up the pace a bit going into the final day. So, I get a pairing, which is interesting. So, my opponent this round, I have the white pieces against my opponent with the black pieces. My opponent is like 1800 level player. Realistically, in an open tournament, second round on 1.5 out of 2, you should usually have someone rated at least 2000. Depends on the event, but on this sort of level Congress, you'd usually expect to be playing somewhere around 2000. But I just happened to be right at the top of the bottom, right at the bottom of the top half of players on 1.5, and just happened to get paired against the bottom player on 1.5, who took a bye on the first day and then got on a really, really nice upset with a really nice, well-played game against a 2000, which I think was their highest rated win, so big congrats to them on that. But yeah, no, in theory, this is quite a lucky pairing, just on pure numbers. But they are a very strong player. I know that they're a very strong player. They're improving very, very quickly, and they've just gotten the best win of their chess career. So in my head, I'm like, I know on numbers, I'm the high-rated player. I have the white pieces. Like, everything should be looking in my favour for this game. But I'm a little, I'm a little perturbed. I'm a little concerned. Just because this person's clearly playing very, very well. And and I didn't see their first game. Like, this is an 1800 that just beat up a 2000 in a game. Like, that doesn't happen, like, by accident. Or, I mean, it's very rare for that kind of thing to happen by accident. Um, Actually, the round tomorrow, um, the one person wins their game in like 15 minutes because their opponent's phone goes off, and the arbiter just, yeah, disqualifies them because you can't have your phone on in a chess tournament. So, yeah. So I guess you can win games sort of by accident, but that was definitely not what happened. My opponent played well. They deserved their second round win. So I was a bit scared. And of course, I'm kind of playing for nothing as well. It's like the expectation on me is as the higher rated player to perform and to win my game. And the expectation, and also like rating wise as well, I win small rating gains, I lose big rating losses, or if I draw. So, in theory, I should be happy and I should feel like sort of lucky with this pairing, but in reality, I was very nervous. I was not particularly happy with this pairing because it puts all the pressure on me to perform. But let's get on with the game. So, I play c4. If you watch my first round game, I've been playing a lot of c4 at the moment, or transposition into English and Catalan variations or Neo-Catalan lines. Yeah, I've been enjoying playing c4. And my opponent goes g6, which is funny because if you looked at my second round game, this is actually what I played against my second round opponent. So I had a brief second of, wait, is my opponent trying to do what I did this morning, where you play a symmetrical English but disallow the knight f3 d4 line, which is fine with me because I don't normally play the knight f3 d4 line anyway. So it's all good, completely fine. And so I don't mind avoiding that, so I just go g3, and actually, yeah, up until bishop g7, wherein of course my game this morning I go c5, I've actually got the exact same position with the opposite colours as I did in round 1, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so we get normal developing moves. I'm still not totally sure which structure my opponent's going to play for, whether they're going to go for e5 or c5 or c6 or e6. All of these are totally reasonable, or d6 even. Like, everything here is totally fine for black. This is not a critical line for white to play. generally, I have some good positional advantages. Now, they choose to go for c6. d6 is, yeah, totally reasonable. Of course, the plan is that you're just trying to play d5, be very solid, take control over the center of the board. Obviously, my setup is designed to prevent d5 from being played, so my opponent's saying, basically looking at me like, oh, you don't want d5 to be played? You really don't want d5 to be played? I'm going to play d5. And make you sad. And, yeah, so I basically say, no, you're not playing d5. Or at least if you want to play d5, you have to put a little bit more effort in. The queen often comes out to b3 in these lines. I don't think it's the top engine move. I think normally people just go knight f3 or e4 to prevent d5 here. Yeah, which is all totally reasonable. Actually, e4 is kind of interesting here. Because you just force them into, like, a very specific line of the King's Indian defense. Which, yeah, it's kind of weird, because c6 isn't the line that people normally play, but at the same time, g3, bishop g2 is not the most critical variation either. It's interesting. I should have a look at this in case I face something similar again. But I go for a similar idea. I go queen b3, just saying, yeah, I don't want you to play d5. And my opponent goes, well, I'll get my king to safety, and I'm going to play for d5. Sorry, yeah, I'm delaying this knight f3 move, because the second I play knight f3, they can go d5. But, actually, they go e6, and I wanted them to commit to e6 before going d5. And the point of this is that now if they go d5, this bishop is not leaving. Generally, there are some annoying lines where you go c6, d5, and you get your bishop out, so I see the fact of them going e6 as kind of like a bit of a win. Because now after d5 is played, their light square bishop's still going to struggle to develop, and this will still be like a problem piece, as it often is in these kinds of structures. But, so now I've achieved that, they're going to play d5, there's nothing I can do about it, so I might as well play knight f3 and, oh, I was about to say and castle, but I forgot I didn't castle. I go bishop g5 just so that if they go d4, I can just play knight e4. And my position looks very comfortable. That looks like the greatest Benoni I've ever seen in my entire life, up like 700 gazillion tempos. And they've played like the g3/g6 variation, which is what every Benoni player dreams of. They go to sleep and they just see the bishop being chattered on the king's side, like, yes, it's beautiful. But yeah, so that's why I go bishop g5. They slide their queen out of the way just to avoid any applying pressure if this pawn moves onto this diagonal. And now I just castle. And my opponent just continues their very solid setup. We get knight to d7. I bring my rook over to the c-file, and of course, I think it's Nimzovich that said this, but it's always the wrong rook. I should have brought the f-rook. There's no reason to bring the a-rook. There are so many variations where they want to go queen b6, and I'm just supposed to leave my queen there so I can take back with the a-pawn and take advantage of the open file. There's no reason to move the c-rook. There's actually no reason at all. Like, sorry, to move the a-rook. Like, just stay on the a-file. It's the rook on the f-file that's not doing anything. And I always do this. I always move the wrong rook, and I know it's the wrong rook, and I just regret it instantly, because my opponent goes queen b6, and they say, why did you move the wrong rook? And I'm like, good point. So, after queen b6, I do accept the trade, because I want to claim that by moving my rook off the file, if they now choose to take and claim the open file themselves, then now I can just go a3 and stunt it, and there's no good b5, b4 breaks, because I've already moved my rook. Yeah, so they choose to take with the knight, keep their structure solid. They're the lower rated player, so I think that they just wanted a really balanced, solid position. But now I'm not totally unhappy, because, yeah, we've traded off some material, which, like, some people would see as moving closer to a draw, but actually, I don't. I think my positional advantages still remain in this position, and actually the trade of queens makes it a lot simpler for me to try and take advantage of my positional edges over my opponent. While if there were queens still on the board, then I have to look for like tactics and attacks and tricks, which could be a real pain. Well, this way I can just take, and I can just say, your dark squares are somewhat weak, your light square bishop is somewhat poorly placed, and we're going to play chess. And I'm fine to apply pressure from a position like this. It's kind of funny, because I'm quite a young player, and you normally think of, well, I mean, relatively, I'm young relative to the global population. Relative to chess players that people would consider young, I'm probably quite old at this point. I don't think that many players would consider me a junior. And I've also been playing for, 13, 14 years at this point, so I'm not lacking the experience. A lot of the time, there's this old sort of saying of get juniors in the endgame, and that's based on the idea that they just won't have as much experience in these late game phases as you will. And also, the general advantage juniors are considered to have is like faster calculation, and sharper tactics, because that's just what's encouraged for juniors to look at more. But actually, I think I'm much more of a positional player. I'm like, avoid these tactics at all cost. Give me a positional grind, please. Give me an end game, yeah. Because I've just still got all of those years of experience and lots of structural ideas. While I do like tactics, and I find that they can be pretty, but less my style. I just bring my bishop back. My bishop doesn't need to be out here anymore. It's not applying pressure. It's not asking any real questions. And I want to keep this defended with a piece other than my rook, so I can potentially move that. Additionally, if they take, I want to be able to trade off bishops, because their dark square bishop is clearly better than my dark square bishop, I think. Additionally, it's about what's left on the board. It's not about what's taken off. And if we trade off these pieces, I've just got a good light square bishop in comparison to a bad light square bishop, I felt. And I have the more useful half-open file. I can start some kind of minority attack at some point, and I thought that was reasonable play in this position despite all the trades. We get bishop to d7, just trying to develop their pieces, connect their rooks, and I go h4, just trying to take a bit of space on the king side, and I'm also just asking my opponent. Like, this is a very, very sort of positional game. I'm just interested in what my opponent's sort of planning to do, because I can't... it's hard to find good plans, and it's hard to understand what plans are good in these kinds of positions. So I'm like, I'm going to play it slowly, I'm going to take some space, and I just want to see how my opponent deals with that. None of my moves are bad, none of my moves are particularly aggressive, so I'm just sort of going to sit back and let my opponent sort of play their own game. We'll both improve our own positions, and I'm just going to argue that I'm going to be able to improve mine more effectively than they will, and they'll be making holes while I'll be making advantages. And now they go rook to c8, rook 8 to c8. Yeah, again, not totally sure what this move does. I guess it defends c6, moves out the way of the diagonal, avoids some a4, a5, a6 ideas, which could potentially be scary. But yet again, it's kind of reasonable for my opponent to be asking me the same thing of my position's totally reasonable, so I'm just going to play a slow move, and what are you going to do about it? Like, my opponent's the lower rated player, very happy with a draw. I would have assumed that they would have been happy with a draw, so yeah, well, they have to do nothing. Now, I play knight to g5, and the point of this is very simple. I just want to reroute my knight to a square where it's going to be a little more active, or induce the f5 move. And f5 is not a bad move at all, but it creates potentially weaknesses that I could take advantage of. It also puts more pawns on light squares, which surrounds their light square bishop, which I'd be happy with. But yet again, it's more of just a question of, are you going to go f5? Is that something that's important to you? And they trade on c3. They don't go f5, they don't feel like they need to force off, but they trade off the knights, and then they centralize their other knight. I guess their point was, they've got two knights that want to be on the d5 square, so trade off one of them and put the other one on the d5 square. But, like I said, this allows me to trade off bishops, and I can centralize my knight. And now the f5 move is still playable-ish, but moves like knight to c5, knight to d6 are looking kind of scary. So my opponent plays rook to c7, and it's a kind of ugly move to have to play, but you've got to avoid these simultaneous ideas of knight c5 and knight d6, so I'm not totally sure what else they're supposed to play. Now, I go a3, and I'm just trying to stop their knight from making any forward progress into the position, and yet again, I'm passing the baton back to them. I'm saying, I think that the moves that I have made have been quite effective. I think my knight is well placed, and I've traded off their better bishop for my less good bishop, so I'm just going to keep up the same tactic. The position's roughly equal, so what are you going to do? I'm just going to keep improving my position. I'll play for b4 if you allow me, and b5, and that could be scary. And I'm just going to, ask you, what are you actually doing with your position? Your pieces are very inactive and slightly misplaced, other than your knight on d5, so I mean, it should be a draw, but prove it. That's all I'm trying to say. They go a5, so they're stopping my b4 move. But I thought that this was already a step in the wrong direction. Because I always say, if you're going to make a passing move, like some kind of waiting move, never use a pawn. And I don't think that this is a waiting move, but I think that they should have been looking for a waiting move realistically. Something like, I don't know, like fc8. I don't love that move, but I can't find a move that I particularly like for them anyway. But yeah, the issue is once you push pawns, first of all, it's not a permanent solution because you cannot move pawns backwards. And second of all, because you cannot move pawns backwards, it's always going to create holes. If you ever in the entirety of the rest of the game want your pawn on a6 or a7, it's simply not going to be possible. It's simply not going to be achievable. You should never ever push a pawn unless there's a very concrete reason to do so, if there's a chance you might want it on the square behind. Like, I've always said you need very clear justification for any pawn push that you make in the endgame, because you're creating holes, and you need some justification of why those holes are valid. And, yeah, I don't think my opponent had one. I think that their justification was now I can't play b4, which is fair enough, but I didn't really want to go b4 anyway, so I just continue with my slow chess. Rook to c2, they played b5. And now I think this is actually a critical error, because now I've just got free access to the c5 square for my knight, and that's just a beautiful square for my knight, and there's no way that they can ever kick it away. Additionally, just there are so many holes on the queen side now, and I'm not sure what these pawns pushing forward are trying to achieve. Like, genuinely, I was really struggling to understand what my opponent's plan was. I thought that this created a lot of holes, and I was very happy to see it, because I thought that this was going to end up being some kind of long positional grind, but I felt like my opponent had already created a lot of holes, which makes my job quite a lot easier. I think if I had any advice for my opponent, it would just be to take the position a little slower. I think their position is uncomfortable. Maybe it's worth identifying earlier that you can't really allow my knight to e4. Maybe you had to play your f5. But these pawn pushes, I mean, maybe they're only moves. Maybe I'm not being fair, but they seem very brash. They seem very rushed. So I just continue. So I just say, great, fantastic, beautiful. You've given me this lovely looking square for my knight. I'll take it. They play rook f to c8 to defend the pawn. Now, I do want to make a quick point. I know a lot of people here might trade off the knight for the bishop, because you think bishops are slightly better than knights. That's what Bobby Fischer said, right? But it's never about that. It's all about relative value. This bishop is blocked in by all of my opponent's pawns that are on light squares, while this knight is on the most beautiful outpost you've ever seen. Now, maybe it's worth taking if I'm going to win a pawn. Like, maybe if my opponent hadn't played rook c8, maybe it's worth taking so I can take on c6. But, no, in this position, this is the most beautiful knight I've ever seen, and this bishop is really hoping for a window to look out of someday. So I just continue playing slowly, continue improving my position, rook f to c1, and they bring their bishop back to avoid me taking and winning the pawn on c6, which would be a big issue. Now, yet again, there are a couple of things I was considering here. I was considering e4, playing for e5, and then rerouting my knight to the d6 square, which looked really nice. I was looking at potentially even taking on d5, the point being that you can't take back with the c-pawn, so you've got a permanent weakness. Actually, just out of interest, bit of a puzzle. Why can't you take back with the c-pawn? Pause it now if you want a second to figure it out. Yeah, just simple discovered attack. You take on e6, you win a pawn, and in exchange, your opponent can resign in this position. So yeah, they have to take back with the e-pawn, and then I felt that I just had a good knight versus bad bishop situation. I was going to put my pawns on d4, e3, put my knight on d3, so I'm ready. I still have control over the c5 square, and I can potentially come to e4 to apply pressure to the c6 square. I thought that was a totally reasonable plan, but I thought I was also in no rush. So I thought all of the plans are supported by this d4 move. there is no scenario in which d4 is... I thought there was no scenario in which d4 is not a useful move to play. It also prevents them from playing e5 and releasing their bishop at some point. So I was like, it's always a useful move to play. I'm just going to improve my position. And yet again, just pass the baton back to my opponent. Say, what are you going to do? Your position looks really cramped. It looks really uncomfortable. How are you going to play this? And they say, I'm going to pawn break. I'm going to go b4. I'm going to try and justify these big pushes with my pawns. But yet again, I think that this is a real issue, because first of all, I can take, and I can just target the pawn with a move like rook c4, and I'm threatening to take and take the pawn, and if they move either of the rooks out of the way, then I bring my knight back, and then I target c6, or I even trade first. It just, yet again, it's creating an outlying pawn that's really uncomfortable. To precede that, I played e4 first. I thought there are pretty much all scenarios, this is their only good piece. I want to misplace it. They go back to b6, and here I took a long think. Because I was like, the first thing I was thinking was, can I just win a pawn with like takes, and knight a6? Does that just win a clean pawn? And then I was looking at it, and I was like, rook d7, attacking d5, rook takes c6 perhaps? Rook takes c6, rook takes c6, queen, rook takes d4, discovered attack my bishop, but the knight's hanging. It looked very complicated. I think it's probably objectively good, but then there's also issues that I potentially need to deal with, like takes, like takes on b4. Potentially there's a move like rook d8 immediately. I think it's a totally reasonable move. There's nothing wrong with taking first, but I choose to go d5 instead. I think that this is a really nice move, because yet again, you cannot take, for the same tactical reason I was discussing before. You lose a pawn and an exchange, and that position, yet again, just resignable. If you take back with the pawn first, which is what I was expecting e takes, and rook d8, which I thought was basically necessary to maintain the position. I was thinking after something like this, now I could take and go knight a6, and my position looks very healthy. I think I'm just winning a pawn in that position. Or I can also go takes, rook e8, rook takes c6. And yet again, it's just a very interesting position, lots of options, but I think I'm winning a pawn there. I'm struggling to slightly remember what I was calculating in the game. But yeah, it's just taking space, yet again, improving my position, and it definitely can't be captured by the c-pawn, and if they take it with the d-pawn, with the e-pawn, then yet again, I can just replace it and apply more pressure to c6, that weakness that I've got to attack. Additionally, it's a forcing move because it comes with a threat. It comes with an immediate threat. If my opponent does nothing, if my opponent takes on a3, actually, maybe I have to take back. No, okay, if my opponent plays h6, then I can take on e6, and I'm just winning a pawn because they can't recapture because knight takes, yet again, winning a pawn, winning an exchange, and black can resign. So, they go knight to d7, and this is a big mistake. And actually, I was considering a couple of things here. I was considering d6, which I think is the best move. And we'll check it with the engine in a second, but I think d6, like an f4 and e5, just solidifying that passed pawn on the 6th rank is just really positionally cramping, very hard for my opponent to play. Additionally, there are scenarios where I can just play e4, bishop takes. I've got the massive target on c6 and the outside passed pawn. I think I'm at least winning a pawn there, and I've got the passed pawn. It should be completely over. I choose to play the line, I think, slightly simpler. I take on e6, and the point of this is that I just win a pawn, and I'm going to play e4 and apply pressure to the c6 pawn. Nice tactical idea, by the way. If they try and move their knight in this position, then I can take their bishop and promote to a knight. I can also promote to a queen, but promote to a knight, right? Like, it's just funner. Comes with check. They have to take back. And then I am simply up. Maybe I take here. But I'm simply up 2 pawns. This position should be completely crushing. I'm up a passed pawn, and I'm probably going to win b4 as well. So my opponent doesn't allow that. They play bishop takes f7. I play rook takes c5. They trade on a3. and they go a4 to avoid me from just picking up the a5 pawn, and now I just simply go e5, pushing my passed pawns. Passed pawns are there to be pushed, in the words of Bobby Fischer, and basically just forces a really passive move, like bishop to e8, after which I could play something like rook to c4 perhaps, and I'm just threatening to pick up the a pawn. And that position yet again is completely winning. I mean, this endgame, very, very clean conversion after this knight d7 move, if I don't say so myself. They go bishop b6 just to try and stay active, but this just allows me to trade off absolutely everything. Bishop b3 is the only move that saves the a-pawn, and I go f4 to solidify my structure. We both bring our kings. There's a nice idea here, because I'm setting up sort of a mating net that if they keep running their king forward, the natural move here is definitely king f5, but then I have the nice move bishop to d7, which forces the trade of bishops. They have to go bishop e6, and I can take the pawn on a4, or I can simply trade and play king e4, and then g4, f4, and f5, and up to connector passed pawns. That is comfortably enough to win the game, with just kings on the board. So they don't fall for that, which would have been a nice way to end the game. They bring their king back, I centralize my bishop, I keep bringing my king forward, and after this move, bishop to a2, I simply play bishop to c2, and my opponent resigns, because the only way to defend the a4 pawn is to go bishop to b3, and after the trade of bishops and my king comes back to c3, this game's resignable. The king cannot walk forward to fight, to try and grab the bottom of the pawn chain, because the second they go to g4, I push e3, e6, e7, e8, and I make a queen, and that's comfortably enough. I pick up this pawn, and now I've got, I mean, I can win with just the outside passed pawn and the central pawn, because they're bridesmaids. I mean, of course, I need to be able to prevent these as well, but yeah, I've just got too many pawns, just far too many pawns, and in this position, my opponent chooses to resign. Actually, sorry, my opponent chose to resign in this position back with bishop after bishop c2. So, just going to have a quick look through the game with the engine, and then I'm going to go and watch the Romanian Chess Classic. So yeah, what does it think of the opening? Yeah, this is all totally reasonable, I think. Queen to b3. Yeah, queen to b3 isn't the most critical move. It's totally reasonable, and it just gets them out of theory, was my thinking as well. Yeah, the most critical move is definitely e4, as the engine is saying, and as the explorer was saying earlier, but it allows a whole new bucket of worms and a bunch of structures that I'm not totally comfortable with, so I go for queen b3. It just allows a lot of transpositions and stuff which I don't know super well. Same with d4, which is totally reasonable in this position, but I just don't feel super comfortable with a lot of the transpositions. And my opponent castles. This is fine. D5, yeah, it's still fine. Yeah, the engine didn't love this. I thought this was interesting. It just wants me to castle and get my king to safety, which is totally reasonable. I guess that point is that the bishop doesn't really know where it wants to be yet. I was just thinking castles, potentially d5 is slightly scary, but I'm also totally fine with that. So actually, I'm not totally sure what I was scared of. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense by the engine. I should keep that in mind. Yeah, a slight inaccuracy, but yeah, they need to go h6 or knight bd7 to take advantage of that. But yet again, it's a balanced position, it's equal, we'll play chess from here. But they go here, which is a slight mistake again. I just castle, get my king safety, get knight bd7, and rook ac1. Interesting way, I was talking about it being the wrong rook that I moved. The engine's actually saying, oh, well, okay, now it's changing its mind and suggesting a bunch of other stuff. But if you pause the video, go back, you can see that was the engine recommendation to go rook ac1 for all of 20 seconds, but all of these moves are very equal. We get queen to b3, b6, and I do trade. They were supposed to take with the pawn, by the way. That was clearly the best move, but they chose to keep the solid structure and take back with the knight. And now, yeah, takes, and bishop back to d2. It's just a, it's just a very solid, very balanced position. Well, we'll play chess. We'll play chess from the endgame. Yeah, no real issues with any of our moves. It's a very slow position at this point. Yeah, knight g4. Yeah, I could also go knight e4, which was something else I was considering, but I didn't love bishop takes b2 and introducing a lot of complications, which I felt were unnecessary. So we go knight g4, and yeah, again, yeah, here the engine says f5 is best. They choose to trade, and yeah, this does allow this knight e4, which is a bit of an issue. Now the engine just says h6, play it slowly. I'm interested in h6. Knight c5. Now rook c7, and I've just probably the best place for my knight was still back here. Daniel Naroditsky, the threat is stronger than the execution, right? But yeah, okay, so rook c7, there's nothing really wrong with this move. And yeah, a3, yeah, again, very slow position. But yeah, no, the engine agrees with me. a5 is a bit of a mistake. And the reason that this as a mistake matters more than other mistakes that have been played in this game is this is more permanent. Like, you have permanently created holes, which my knight and bishop might be able to take advantage of. The other mistakes in this game, I mean, inaccuracies, it's not really a mistake, but the reason I feel this matters more than some of the other smaller issues in this is that it's not. It's something that I'll always potentially be able to ask questions about, and it's not something that you can ever take back or pretend didn't happen. Like, you play a bad piece move, you can take it back next move, and you've wasted a tempo, but it's probably not the end of the world. But yeah, so I just double up my rooks, it's got no issues with this, and yeah, again, yeah, b5 is where things start to go seriously wrong, because you're just creating too many holes, too much empty space here in your structure, and I play the best move. I take advantage of that with knight c5, rook fc8, and rook fc1. Finally, getting rid of the issue of the wrong rook, because they're both on the c-file, it's all fine, and I can stop Aaron Nimzovich from getting upset with me. Now, yeah, I thought that this move was basically forced. The engine was saying knight e7, but it's really hard to retreat basically your only active piece on the board. Yeah, so they want me to go for bishop d5, e takes d5, and play that endgame with good knight versus bad bishop while they've got the weakness on c6. But I don't think it will hate my move. No real issues with d4. We get b5. And yet again, this is a bit of an issue. Like I was saying, it separates the pawns. And it's just a bit of a mistake that I can take advantage on. Yet again, it wants me to trade, and take advantage of the slightly better endgame, but probably no issues again with e4. Yeah, okay, it's not the most critical move, but I've still maintained my edge. I'm forcing the knight back to this slightly uncomfortable square, and d5 is one of the best moves. Yeah, you have to play e takes d5 here, is what the engine is saying, basically. Everything else is like, I mean, even if you do, it's still not great, but everything else is just critically much worse. We get knight d7, and yeah, no, like I said, I felt I'd missed something here with d6, and d6 is the best move. Oh, wow, you have to play knight c5. I was expecting rook c7 if I did this. Takes, and e5. Yeah, and this is just structurally busted. I just thought it was nicer for me to get something concrete in exchange for this, because, like, they go a6, and I'm not winning a pawn, and of course I'm structurally just much better in this position, but yeah, I wanted to be up the concrete material, so that's why I chose to take instead, which the engine doesn't love as much, but, oh, wow, they come e7's a real mistake because of rook takes. Wow, I didn't even consider that, but luckily for me, neither did my opponent. And now I take on c5. And yeah, okay, the engine doesn't love this as much as it loves the other line, but from a human perspective, I'm up something tangible. I'm up a pawn. Of course, the other position is fantastic. I'm not going to argue with the engine, but it's nice to be up tangible material. We get takes, a4. Yeah, and all of a sudden, yeah, you can't play this. You have to go rook d8. You have to try and get yourself some activity. But yet again, rook d8, if that's your best move, then I'm just winning another pawn, right? Like, it's very hard to play these moves that are like just for activity as a human being. And it's still plus 1.2 for me, so my opponent chooses to trade, and a4, e5, bishop b6, and yeah, this is just a fatal mistake, because you cannot allow me to trade all of the rooks, and this endgame is just concretely winning, yeah. Okay, I hope that that was a fun game, and I hope it was instructive as to how to apply pressure to players that you outrate, even when they're playing really well, how to play it solidly, just maintain your advantage, maintain your position, and yeah, if you're playing players that don't have as much experience in certain structures or positions as you, sort of letting them play themselves into difficult positions as well. It's an important skill to be able to do, to have the patience to be able to do that. I've seen 2000 rated players over the board in Classical who struggle with that ability. If that's an ability that you can master, I'm not saying I've mastered it, but I think that this is a good example that I'm going in the right direction. If you can master that skill of patience and just letting your opponent outplay themselves, like, it will take you very far. Patience in chess is a virtue, one of the most important things. I hope that that was an interesting game. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope that you have a nice day. All the best. Merry Christmas. Oh, and next episode probably coming out tomorrow. Probably. See ya. Bye.